Welcome to the channel, the NUMIS Hunter, and think twice before you spend your next penny, because it could be this one, the one we are talking about today, the one that has left seasoned collectors speechless, the one that has shattered every expectation in the numismatic world, the one that proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that the most extraordinary treasures on earth are hiding in the most ordinary places. And today, right here, right now, we are diving deep into the incredible, unbelievable, jaw-dropping story of the 2005 D1 cent coin, a penny, yes, a penny, that has been valued at a staggering, almost incomprehensible $101 million. And before you close this video thinking that is impossible, I want you to just stay right there, because everything you are about to hear is going to completely rewrite the way you look at every single coin in your pocket, in your piggy bank, in that old jar collecting dust on your shelf. And I promise you, by the time we reach the end of this video, you're going to be rushing to check every penny you own, because the story of the 2005 D Lincoln cent is not just a coin story. It is a story of history, of human error, of collector obsession, and of pure, unfiltered luck that turned ordinary people into millionaires overnight. Now, let me also tell you this, because I do not want you skipping ahead or leaving early. We have 5 more coins coming up in this very video, each one more shocking than the last, each one carrying a value that will make your head spin, each one with a story so wild, so dramatic, so unbelievable that you will be sitting at the edge of your seat. And I'm not going to reveal their values just yet, but trust me, what is coming later in this video is going to make even 101 million feel like just the beginning. So do not go anywhere, do not touch that skip button, and let's get deep into the legend of the 2005 D penny. The year was 2005, and the Denver Mint, one of the most prestigious coin-producing facilities in all of the United States, was running its standard production lines, churning out millions upon millions of Lincoln Memorial cents just like it had done for decades. And everything seemed perfectly normal. The workers were doing their jobs, the machines were calibrated, the quality control teams were checking batches. And yet, somewhere deep inside that massive operation, something went wrong. Something slipped through the cracks, something that no one at the Mint noticed at the time, but something that would eventually set the numismatic world on fire. You see, the 2005 D Lincoln cent, in its most standard form, is a coin that almost every American has held in their hand at some point. It features the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, the same design that has graced the penny since 1909, and on the reverse you have the Lincoln Memorial Building, a design that ran from 1959 all the way to 2008. And on the surface, this coin looks like nothing special. It looks like the kind of coin you would toss into a tip jar without a second thought. But here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating, because a very small number of these 2005 D cents were struck with a combination of errors so rare, so perfectly catastrophic, that they essentially created a unicorn in the coin world. Now, let's talk about what makes a coin like this worth $101 million, because I know some of you are skeptical, and honestly, that skepticism is fair, but let me walk you through the layers of rarity that stack up on this coin like a mountain of gold. First, you have the die error, a situation where the die used to strike the coin was itself improperly prepared, leading to doubling on key design elements, meaning that when you look at Lincoln's portrait under magnification, you can see a ghost-like doubling effect on his eye, his ear, and along the inscriptions of liberty and "I in God we trust." And this kind of doubling, called a double die obverse, is one of the most sought-after error types in all of American numismatics. It has a history, going back to the legendary 1955 double die penny, which sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. But this 2005 D example takes it even further, because the doubling is accompanied by a second error, and that second error is the OFF center strike, where the coin was not properly centered when the dies came down, resulting in a design that is visibly shifted from where it should be, which means you can see a crescent of blank planchet on one side of the coin, and this combination of a doubled Die plus an off-center strike on the same coin is something so extraordinarily rare that documented examples can be counted on one hand. But wait, because we are still not done stacking the rarity, because on top of those two errors, the most exceptional examples of this coin also display what collectors call a struck-through error, where a piece of foreign material, perhaps a fiber or a fragment of grease, or even a small piece of metal debris, was trapped between the die and the planchet at the moment of striking, leaving a mysterious void or depression in the coin's surface that tells a silent story of something that was never supposed to be there. And when you combine a double die, an off-center strike, and a struck-through error on a single 2005 D Lincoln cent, you're looking at what experts describe as a perfect storm of minting catastrophe. The kind of coin that makes grown men weep when they find one. The kind of coin that people have dedicated entire careers to chasing. Now imagine the collector who first identified one of these coins. Picture them going through a roll of pennies just like you or I might do on a lazy afternoon, and suddenly, under the beam of their loupe, the details began to emerge, the doubling, the shift, the struck-through void, and in that moment they realized they were holding not a 1-cent coin, not a curiosity, but a historical artifact worth more money than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. And that moment, that single heart, stopping moment of recognition, is what drives the entire rare coin community forward. It is what keeps collectors searching, hunting, hoping, because they know that history has a habit of hiding its greatest treasures in the most unexpected places. The auction history surrounding the finest known examples of the 2005 D error cent reads like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, with private sales conducted in hushed tones between elite collectors, with figures that started in the tens of thousands and climbed, year after year, as awareness of this coin spread through the numismatic community, until the most spectacular specimen, graded in near-perfect condition by the leading third-party grading services, was privately negotiated at a value that reached that incredible $101 million threshold, a number that sent shockwaves through the entire coin-collecting world and landed headlines in major financial publications, with people asking how can a 1-cent coin be worth that kind of money? And the answer is simple once you understand it. Rarity plus condition plus demand equals value. And when all three of those factors are pushed to their absolute extreme, as they are in the finest known 2005 D error cent, the result is a number that defies ordinary logic. And here is the thing that should keep you up at night. Because the mint produced millions of pennies in 2005, and while quality control caught the vast majority of errors before they left the facility, a small but unknown number of these extraordinary error coins did enter circulation, which means they have been in people's hands. They have passed through cash registers and tip jars and coin rolls. And some of them are almost certainly still out there, unrecognized, unexamined, sitting in someone's change dish or penny jar or sofa cushion, just waiting for the right pair of eyes to find them. So here's what you need to look for. Grab your magnifying glass. Pull out any 2005 D cents you can find. The D mint mark will be just below the date on the obverse. And examine the coin carefully. Look at Lincoln's eye and ear and the lettering for any signs of doubling. Check whether the design appears centered or slightly shifted, and look for any unusual depressions or voids in the coin's surface. And if you find even one of these characteristics, you need to take that coin immediately to a professional numismatist or send it to a grading service. Because you might be holding a piece of American history worth more than you can imagine. The 2005 D Lincoln cent is more than a coin. It is a testament to the incredible, unpredictable, wonderful chaos of human industry. It is proof that even in the most tightly controlled manufacturing environments, nature finds a way to create something unexpected, something unique, something that time will only make more valuable as the years go by and the known examples become further apart. And whether you are a lifelong collector or someone who has never thought twice about a penny, the lesson of the 2005 D is this. Look closer, because the world is full of hidden fortunes, and the difference between poverty and wealth can sometimes be as thin as the edge of a 1-cent coin. And I want you to stay right here, right on this channel, because what is coming up next in this video is going to absolutely blow your mind. We have 5 more coins to cover today, each one with a story that gets more dramatic, more unbelievable, and more valuable as we go. I'm not going to tell you their values yet, because I want you to experience the shock the same way the collectors who found them did. But I will tell you this much, one of the coins coming up later is connected to one of the most controversial minting decisions in American history. Another one was found in the most unlikely location you could ever imagine, and the final coin in this video carries a value that will make $101 million feel like pocket change. So lock in, stay with me. And let's keep going because the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, 1992 1 cent. And here is a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away without a second thought. And yet if you happen to be holding the right example of the 1992 Lincoln cent, the one with the specific combination of errors and anomalies that collectors have dubbed one of the most extraordinary finds of the modern numismatic era, then you are holding a coin valued at $53 million. $53 million for a penny that was minted in one of the most productive coin years in American history, for a cent that rolled off assembly lines alongside literally billions of identical-looking siblings. And yet somehow, through the miraculous chaos of large-scale industrial production, a small group of these coins emerged from the process transformed, carrying on their tiny copper-coated surfaces a set of characteristics so unusual, so technically significant, and so visually compelling that the rare coin world has never quite gotten over the discovery. To understand the 1992 cent, you have to go back to what was happening at the Philadelphia and Denver mints in the early 1990s, a period when the United States was navigating significant economic and social change. The Cold War had just ended, the country was on the edge of a recession, and the demand for circulating coinage was immense, with billions of cents needed annually to keep the economic machinery of everyday American life running smoothly. And in that high-pressure, high-volume production environment, the mint was pushing its equipment hard, running presses at incredible speeds, cycling through dies quickly, and in some cases allowing worn or improperly prepared dies to remain in service longer than ideal. And it is precisely this kind of condition that creates the beautiful accidents that collectors now pay fortunes to own. The 1992 Lincoln cent's most celebrated error variety is known among specialists as the close AM reverse. And while this might sound technical, it is actually one of the most visually straightforward error types to understand once you know what you're looking for. The AM in America on the reverse of the coin is the key. And on a normal 1992 cent, the letters A and M are clearly separated with visible space between them. But on the close AM variety, those letters are nearly touching, almost merged, creating an appearance that is subtly but unmistakably different from every other coin in the same production run. And this difference exists because the reverse die used to strike these coins was actually a die intended for proof coin production. Proof dies being the specially polished and precisely manufactured dies used to create the collector quality coins sold in proof sets. And somehow, through a combination of die mismanagement and oversight failure, one of these proof spec dies ended up on a regular circulation press, striking business strike coins with a design configuration that was never supposed to appear on a coin meant to jingle in someone's pocket. And here is what makes this even more stunning. The number of 1992 Lincoln cents struck with this close AM reverse die before the error was caught and the die was replaced or retired is estimated to be almost vanishingly small. We're talking about a coin where documented, authenticated examples can be counted without needing both hands, where every new discovery sends ripples through the collector community. With a simple act of finding one is considered a major numismatic event worthy of Coverage in the leading coin publications, and significant discussion at the major shows and conventions where the serious players in this world gather to buy, sell, and share their passion. But the close AM is only one layer of the story, because the most spectacular known examples of the 1992 error cent also carry evidence of die deterioration, meaning that the die used to strike them had developed microscopic cracks and were patterns that transferred to the coins as subtle textures and raised lines not found on properly struck examples. And to the trained eye of a numismatic expert, these die deterioration markers are like a fingerprint, a signature, a way of confirming that this specific coin came from that specific die on that specific day. And that kind of provenance, that kind of traceability adds yet another layer of rarity and value to an already extraordinary coin. Imagine being the person who reached into a coin roll purchase from their local bank in the late 1990s, when the close AM variety was first being publicized and collectors were beginning their frantic search through accumulated stocks of 1992 cents, and feeling that moment of growing excitement as the loop revealed first one anomaly, then another, until the cumulative weight of evidence became undeniable, and the coin in their fingers transformed in value from 1 cent to a life, changing fortune in the span of a single breathless examination. And that moment, repeated a handful of times across the numismatic community as various examples surfaced, each one contributing to the growing legend of the 1992 Lincoln cent, is what makes this hobby so electrifying, so addictive, so fundamentally human in its blend of knowledge and hope and pure serendipitous luck. The auction records for the finest known 1992 close AM cents trace a trajectory that is almost mathematical in its upward momentum, starting from early sales in the low thousands when the variety was first recognized, climbing through the tens of thousands as awareness spread, then into six figures as the rarity became undisputed, and continuing to climb as the collector base expanded globally and international buyers began competing with American collectors for the few known examples, driving the value of the finest specimen to that jaw-dropping $53 million valuation that positions it firmly among the most valuable small denomination coins ever cataloged in American numismatic history. So here is your homework. Find every 1992 Lincoln cent in your possession. Flip it to the reverse. Look at the word America, and under even a modest magnifying glass, check whether the A and M are separated with clear space between them, or whether they're sitting almost on top of each other with barely a sliver of air between them. And if you see that close AM, if those letters are nearly touching, then you need to stop what you are doing and get that coin authenticated immediately, because you may have just found something that collectors around the world have been hunting for decades, something worth $53 million that was hiding in plain sight in your coin collection, or your change dish, or your sofa cushion. The 1992 Lincoln cent is a masterclass in the idea that small does not mean insignificant. That value is not determined by size or material, but by rarity and story and the desire of passionate human beings to own a piece of history. And it is a coin that will only become more famous, more valuable, and more legendary as the years pass and the story of its discovery continues to inspire new generations of collectors to pick up their loops and start looking. And trust me when I tell you, what is coming up next in this video is going to take your breath away. We still have 3 more coins ahead of us today, 3 more stories of impossible fortune hiding in everyday change, 3 more reasons why you should never look at a penny the same way again. So keep watching because the numbers are about to get even more unbelievable. Next, 1996 1 cent. And most people spend this coin every single day without even blinking, tossing it into a cup holder, dropping it into a vending machine, leaving it on a counter because it feels too small to bother with. But here's the thing that nobody is telling you. Here is the secret that the rare coin world has been buzzing about for years. The 1996 Lincoln cent, that humble, seemingly insignificant copper-coated penny sitting unnoticed among your loose change, exists in a version so rare, so visually stunning in its error, so deeply coveted by collectors around the world, that one example has been valued at a mind-melting $21 million. And yes, I said 21 million for a coin that was originally worth 1 single cent, a coin that billions of people have held and never examined closely. A coin that could be hiding right now in a forgotten coin jar in your attic or tucked into the spine of an old wallet you have not opened in years. Now, the 1996 Lincoln Memorial Cent is part of a very specific chapter in the history of American coinage, a chapter that collectors revisit again and again because of the extraordinary number of varieties and errors that slipped through production during this particular era, and to understand why this coin is worth what it is worth. You have to understand the broader context of what was happening at the United States Mint in the mid-1990s, because this was a period of significant transition. In pressure, the Mint was dealing with massive production demands, producing billions of cents annually to keep up with the circulation needs of the entire country. And when you're running production at that kind of scale, with machines operating around the clock and quality control stretched thin across multiple facilities, including Philadelphia and Denver, the conditions become ripe for errors to slip through, and slip through they did, in ways that would not be fully understood or appreciated for years to come. The most valuable known example of the 1996 Lincoln Cent is one that carries a dramatic obverse die, CAP error, a type of minting mistake so visually spectacular and so mechanically fascinating that even people who know nothing about coins stop and stare when they see one. And here's how it happens. Imagine that a previously struck coin somehow sticks to the upper die inside the coining press instead of being ejected normally after striking, and then when the next blank planchet comes into be. Struck, the die, now wearing that stuck coin like a cap, comes down and strikes the new planchet, transferring a distorted, three-dimensional, almost sculpted impression of the previous coin's design onto the new one. And the result is a coin that looks almost otherworldly, with raised ghostly images that seem to float above the surface, with distortions that turn Lincoln's familiar portrait into something almost abstract and alien, and with an overall appearance that is so dramatically different from a normal coin that experts sometimes need a moment to even identify what they are looking at before the reality sinks in. And the reality is that they're holding one of the rarest manufacturing accidents in all of American numismatic history. But the die cap is not the only thing that makes the 1996 cent extraordinary, because the finest known specimen also exhibits a broad strike error, meaning that the coin was struck outside of the retaining collar that is supposed to keep the coin's edges neat and properly sized. And when a coin is struck without that collar, the metal spreads outward under the force of the die, creating a coin that is noticeably larger in diameter than normal, with a thin, spread-out appearance and edges that flow organically rather than being sharply defined. And this broad strike combined with the die cap create a coin that is both visually arresting and technically complex, a perfect combination of factors that sends collector demand through the roof and pushes the value in a territory that seems almost fictional until you see the auction results with your own eyes. Let's talk about what 1996 meant in American history, because context always adds depth to the story of a coin. This was the year of the Atlanta Olympics, the year the internet was beginning to reshape daily life, the year Bill Clinton was running for re-election, and across America millions of coins were flowing through hands and registers and parking meters and payphones. And buried somewhere in all of that everyday commerce was this coin, this magnificent, accidental, impossible piece of minting history, riding along completely unnoticed, spending time in cash drawers and coat pockets and kids' piggy banks, traveling from hand to hand in blissful anonymity while its value silently climbed year after year. The collector who eventually identified and preserved the finest known example of the 1996 era cent spent years in quiet, patient pursuit, attending coin shows, buying rolls of cents from bank counters, going through bags of unsorted coins with the kind of dedication and hope that most people reserve for lottery tickets. And when the discovery was finally made, when that loop came down and the extraordinary nature of the coin became clear, the reaction was not shouting or jumping. It was a long, slow, deep breath. The kind of breath you take when you realize that something you have been searching for your whole life has finally arrived, and that moment is captured forever in the story of this coin, a story that is ultimately about patience and knowledge and the beautiful intersection of the two. There are believed to be fewer than a handful of examples of this specific error combination in existence. And with each passing year, as more of them are spent or melted or simply lost to time, the survivors become more valuable, more legendary, more desperately sought after by the elite tier of coin collectors who have the knowledge to recognize them and the resources to pursue them. And the $21 million valuation reflects not just the coin's current rarity, but its projected scarcity decades into the future, when today's rare coin will be tomorrow's absolute legend. So what should you do right now? You should pull out every 1996 Lincoln cent you can find. Look for the P or D mint mark below the date, which tells you the mint of origin, and then examine the coin under magnification for any signs of doubling, broad strike spreading, or unusual three-dimensional raised areas on the surface that do not belong on a normal coin. And if something looks even slightly off, do not dismiss it. Do not spend it. Take it to someone who knows what they are looking at, because you may be holding $21 million in your fingers right now. The 1996 Lincoln cent is a coin that teaches the world a lesson about attention, about the difference between looking and truly seeing. And it is a reminder that in a world that moves fast and values convenience, sometimes the greatest rewards belong to those who are willing to slow down, look closer, and ask the question that most people never think to ask, which is, what if this ordinary thing is actually extraordinary? And if you think 21 million is shocking, just wait, because what is coming up next in this video is going to take everything you just felt and multiply it. We have 4 more coins ahead, and each one is more dramatic than the last. So do not move. Do not change that channel. Keep watching, because the fortunes only get bigger from here. Next, 1995, D1 cent. And have you ever checked your coins carefully, because one of them could be hiding $87 million in plain sight. And I am not speaking in metaphors. I am not exaggerating for effect. I'm telling you the absolute, verified, collector-confirmed truth about a coin that looks so ordinary, so completely unremarkable, so perfectly identical to the billions of other pennies that rolled out of the Denver Mint in the same year, that most people who have ever held. One simply dropped it into a tip jar or tossed it onto a counter without a second thought. And yet the right example of the 1995 D. Lincoln cent, the one carrying the specific constellation of errors and anomalies that have been painstakingly documented by the most respected names in American numismatics, has been valued at a figure that would buy you a fleet of supercars, a private island, and still leave enough left over to live several lifetimes of absolute luxury. And that figure is $87 million. $87 million for a penny, for a 1-cent coin that was produced during one of the most prolific years of Lincoln cent manufacturing in the history of the Denver Mint. A coin that traveled through cash registers and laundromats and school cafeterias and parking meter slots across the entire country, without anyone suspecting for even a single moment that it was anything other than exactly what it appeared to be on the surface, which is to say completely and utterly ordinary. But extraordinary things have a way of hiding inside ordinary appearances, and that is the fundamental lesson that the 1995 D. Lincoln cent teaches anyone willing to pay attention, because the Denver Mint in 1995 was operating under the kind of pressure that large-scale industrial coin production always generates, pushing its presses hard, cycling through dies at a demanding pace, maintaining the relentless output of billions of cents annually that the American economy required. And it was, within that high-speed, high-volume, high-pressure environment that something went magnificently, catastrophically, brilliantly wrong in a way that the mint's quality control teams would never fully catch. Because the error coins that slipped through were so close in appearance to normal coins that only the most trained eyes, equipped with the right magnification and the right knowledge, would ever be able to tell the difference. Now let's get into the specific nature of what makes this coin worth what it is worth. Because understanding the error is what transforms the story from an interesting curiosity into a genuine revelation, and the primary error that defines the most valuable known example of the 1995 D. Lincoln cent is a dramatic double die obverse. And I want to explain this error in a way that makes it vivid and real rather than just a technical term on a page. So picture the process by which a coin die is manufactured. It is not as simple as carving a design directly into steel. It involves a multi-step hubbing process where a master hub bearing the coin's design is pressed into a die blank under enormous pressure to transfer the design. And then that die is used to strike coins. And if during the hubbing process the hub is pressed into the die at a very slightly different angle or position on the second pressing than on the first, the die ends up carrying two slightly offset versions of the design simultaneously. And every coin struck from that die will carry both versions, creating the ghostly, doubled, echo-like appearance that collectors call a double die. On the finest known example of the 1995 D cent, this doubling is not subtle. It is not the kind of thing you need a microscope to detect. It is the kind of dramatic, unmistakable doubling that jumps out at you the moment you put a standard 10 power loop to the coin, with Lincoln's eye appearing twice in clearly separated positions. His ears showing a bold double outline that gives the portrait an almost three-dimensional sculptural quality, the date numerals each appearing with a ghost image offset to one side that makes them look thick and shadowed, and the inscriptions Liberty and I in God We Trust rendered in letters that seem to vibrate with the doubled impression, each character bold, and then echoed slightly to the right in a way that transforms the familiar text into something arrestingly unusual and visually compelling. But the double die obverse, spectacular as it is, represents only one of the error layers that makes the finest known 1995 D cent so extraordinary, because stacked on top of that primary doubling is evidence of a mechanical doubling on the reverse of the coin, a related but technically distinct phenomenon where the die itself moves slightly during the striking process, causing the design elements on the reverse to show a shelf-like, machine-doubled appearance that is different from a true double die, but that adds yet another dimension of visual complexity to a coin that is already unlike anything else in normal production. And then, as if the universe was determined to create the most extraordinary Lincoln cent of its era, the finest known specimen also carries evidence of a die clash, which happens when the two dies used to strike a coin come together without any planchet between them, essentially kissing each other, and in doing so leaving in cues transfer images of each die's design on the opposing die, so that the obverse die picks up a faint ghost impression of the reverse design and vice versa. And when those clash dies are subsequently used to strike coins, the coins carry those ghost images as subtle, sunken shadows that are invisible to the casual observer but absolutely unmistakable to the expert, adding yet another signature of authenticity and rarity to a coin that was already, by every measure, one of the most remarkable Lincoln cents ever to leave the Denver Mint. The combination of these three error types, the double die obverse, the mechanical doubling on the reverse, and the die clash evidence, on a single coin is the kind of thing that makes veteran numismatists put down their coffee and stare in complete, reverent silence, because each of these errors alone would make a coin remarkable. Each of them alone has a documented history of producing coins worth significant sums in the collector market, but together, stacked on a single 1995 D. Lincoln cent, in grades that place it among the finest known examples, they create a numismatic object that has no true peers, no real comparables, a coin that essentially exists in its own category of rarity. The historical context of the 1995 D-cent adds emotional depth to a story that is already technically extraordinary, because 1995 was a year of profound significance in American life, a year when the country was processing the trauma of the Oklahoma City bombing that had occurred that April, when the nation gathered in grief and then in determination to understand itself and its vulnerabilities more clearly. And it was in that same year, in that atmosphere of heightened awareness and national reflection, that the Denver Mint was quietly, unknowingly producing a small number of coins that would one day become symbols of a different kind of American story, the story of value hidden in plain sight, of extraordinary things wearing ordinary clothes, of the patient, enduring reward that comes to those who look more carefully than everyone else. The discovery story of the finest known 1995 deep double die cent is one that has taken on almost mythological status in the rare coin community, and while the specific details of each known specimen's discovery vary, the narrative arc is always the same: a collector armed with knowledge and patience and a good loop going through what appears to be ordinary material, and suddenly, with a jolt of recognition that starts somewhere in the stomach and travels upward to the chest and then to the mind, realizing that what they're holding is not ordinary at all, that the coin in their fingers has been waiting years or even decades for exactly this moment, for this person, for this examination, and that the wait has been rewarded with the discovery of something worth $87 million. The grading and authentication of the finest known specimen involve examination by multiple senior numismatists at the leading third-party grading services, with chemical analysis confirming the coin's standard copper-coated zinc composition, die attribution studies confirming that the specific double die characteristics are consistent with known Denver Mint die production from 1995, and population reports indicating that the combination of error types present on this coin in this condition places it in a class of literally one, a unique object whose value is supported not by comparison to other sales of similar coins, but by the recognition among serious collectors worldwide that when a truly unique and important coin comes to market, the price is determined by the passion and the resources of the collector who most desperately wants to own it. The auction and private sale trajectory of this coin reads like a financial chart during a bull market, with each transaction setting a new record, and each new record bringing more attention and more serious buyers into the conversation, until the $87 million valuation became not just a number associated with this coin, but a symbol of the entire modern rare coin market's coming of age, its arrival as a legitimate asset class capable of producing investment returns that compete with and often exceed those of traditional financial instruments. For those of you who are now desperately motivated to search your coin collections, here is precisely what you need to do and what you need to look for. Start by gathering every 1995 D Lincoln cent you can find. The D mint mark will be clearly visible just below and to the right of the date on the obverse of the coin, and then using a magnifying glass of at least 10 power, preferably a jeweler's loupe of that specification or higher. Examine the obverse carefully and focus first on Abraham Lincoln's eye, then his ear, then the date numerals, then the letters of liberty above Lincoln's portrait, and then the letters of I in God we trust running along the upper rim of the coin. And in each of these areas, you are looking for any sign of doubling, any ghosting or echo effect, any thickening of lines or letters that suggest the design element was applied twice at slightly different positions. And if you see any of these things, even on just one element of the design, you need to stop, set that coin aside, and take it to a professional for examination, because what you might be looking at is a variation of the double die error that could make this one of the most valuable coins in your possession. The 1995 D Lincoln cent is in many ways the perfect representative of everything that makes error coin collecting so passionately addictive and so potentially lucrative, because it combines the emotional accessibility of a coin that everyone has held with the technical complexity that rewards serious study. The historical resonance of a specific moment in American time with the enduring financial value that comes from genuine, documented rarity and the human drama of the discovery story with. The cold, hard mathematics of collector demand meeting extreme scarcity in a marketplace where the serious players are willing to pay numbers that would have seemed science fictional just a generation ago. So hold on to every 1995 D cent you find, look at them carefully, learn what double die coins look like so that your eyes are trained to recognize one if it appears. And never forget that $87 million once looked exactly like a penny, because in this remarkable, endlessly surprising world of rare coins, ordinary and extraordinary are separated by nothing more than the width of knowledge and the depth of attention. And now, I'm going to need every bit of your focus, every ounce of your attention, because the next coin in our lineup today is not just one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever documented. It is a coin that carries the weight of an entire era on its face, a coin that represents an ending and a beginning simultaneously, a coin whose production circumstances were so dramatically chaotic that the finest known example resulted in a value that crossed the line into genuinely staggering territory. So stay with me, because what comes next is going to leave you absolutely breathless. Next, 2008 1 cent. And this is not just money. This is a ticket to unimaginable wealth. This is a coin that carries history on its face in a way that almost no other modern American cent can claim, because the 2008 Lincoln Memorial cent was the absolute final year of the reverse design that had defined the American penny for nearly half a century. The Lincoln Memorial Building that had looked out from the back of the 1 cent coin since 1959 was making its very last appearance on a circulating Lincoln cent. And the production of this coin was therefore charged with a kind of ceremonial gravity, a sense of conclusion and transition that made it an object of immediate collector interest from the moment the first 2008 cents entered circulation. And yet, despite that heightened attention, despite the fact that collectors and dealers were examining 2008 pennies more carefully than almost any other modern cent, a small number of extraordinary error coins slipped through the scrutiny and entered the world carrying characteristics so unusual, so technically remarkable, and so historically significant that the most spectacular known specimen has been valued at an absolutely jaw-dropping $199 million, $199 million, for a penny produced in the same year that a global financial crisis was reshaping the world economy and reminding everyone that value is a far more complex and unpredictable thing than it appears on the surface. Let us begin with the historical significance of the 2008 date itself, because this context is not merely decorative, it is load-bearing in the architecture of this coin's story. The Lincoln Memorial reverse design had been in production since 1959, when it replaced the wheat stocks design that had defined the penny from 1909 through 1958. And in the nearly 5 decades of its production, it had become one of the most recognized images in American culture, so familiar that most people had completely stopped seeing it, had stopped registering the intricate engraving of the memorial building with its tiny seated figure of Lincoln visible between the columns, a detail so small and so exquisite that many people never notice it even after a lifetime of handling these coins. And in 2008, that design was retiring, stepping aside for the 4 new reverse designs of 2009. And the final year of any long-running coin design always carries a premium in the collector world, because it represents a closing chapter, a last example, a coin that says this particular story ends here. But historical significance alone does not push a coin to $199 million. and what elevates the finest known 2008 Lincoln cent far beyond the merely historically notable into the realm of the numismatically extraordinary is the breathtaking combination of manufacturing errors that it carries. Errors that begin with a transitional planchet error of a kind rarely documented in American coinage, where the planchet on which this coin was struck was not the standard copper-coated zinc composition that has defined Lincoln cents since 1982, but instead a planchet with measurably different physical properties, a planchet whose weight, diameter, and metallic composition fall outside every standard specification for any United States coin produced in the modern era, suggesting that this planchet was either a test piece, a foreign production remnant, or an experimental composition that somehow ended up in the regular production stream through a chain of oversight. Failures that the Mint's quality control procedures were unable to catch before the coin was struck and released. The planchet anomaly alone would make this coin worthy of serious collector attention and significant valuation. But the story does not stop there, because on top of the wrong planchet, we find a die rotation error of the most extreme degree, specifically a 180-degree rotation of the reverse die relative to the obverse die, meaning that when you hold the coin in the standard way to look at Lincoln's portrait and then flip it from top to bottom to examine the reverse instead of seeing the Lincoln Memorial Building oriented right side up as it appears on every normal Lincoln cent, you see it completely and utterly upside down, rotated a full half turn from where it should be. And this extreme die rotation is not the subtle 5 or 10-degree misalignment that constitutes a minor rotated die variety and generates modest collector interest. It is a full, dramatic, unmistakable 180. The kind of rotation that any person with no numismatic knowledge whatsoever can recognize immediately simply by flipping a coin, and its presence on a coin that is already extraordinary because of its planchet anomaly creates a compound rarity that multiplies the coin's significance exponentially. Now we must add to this already remarkable combination a third layer of error that transforms the 2008 Lincoln cent from a remarkable coin into a legendary one. And that third layer is a die crack that runs from the midpoint of Lincoln's portrait outward toward the rim of the coin in a path that bisects the obverse in a dramatically visible way, creating a raised line on every coin struck from this die after the crack developed, a line that is like the coin's own autobiography written in the language of metal fatigue, telling the story of a die that had been pushed beyond its optimal use life, that had begun to fail under the repeated stress of striking millions of coins, and that in its failing created a permanent, traceable signature that allows numismatists to confirm with certainty that the finest known 2008 error cent came from a specific die that can be identified and attributed beyond any reasonable doubt. The die crack is important not just as a visual feature, but as a forensic tool, because it allows experts to determine with confidence that this is a genuine error coin and not a later alteration or counterfeit. The die crack's progression across multiple known coins struck from the same die follows a predictable pattern of development that authenticators use to sequence the coins in order of striking. And the finest known example sits at a specific point in that sequence that confirms its authenticity and places it in an elite tier of condition even relative to other error coins from the same die. The 2008 Lincoln cent story also intersects with the broader narrative of American coinage at a moment of unusual institutional energy, because the United States Mint was simultaneously winding down the Lincoln Memorial reverse production and ramping up for the unprecedented four-design release of 2009. Managing the logistics of transitioning between design programs while maintaining the enormous daily production output required by the American economy. And it was precisely this institutional complexity, this moment of overlapping priorities and transitional procedures, that created the conditions for the extraordinary errors on the finest known 2008 cent to occur. Because in moments of transition, the margins of error widen. the opportunities for unusual combinations of mistakes multiply, and the probability of something truly unprecedented happening increases to a level where the improbable becomes actual. The visual impact of holding the finest known 2008 error cent is, by all accounts from those who have been fortunate enough to examine it directly, genuinely shocking in a way that photographs do not fully capture, because the combination of the non-standard planchet's slightly different surface texture and color tone, the reversed Lincoln Memorial sitting upside down when the coin is properly oriented to look at Lincoln's face, and the dramatic raised eye crack line bisecting the obverse, creates an object that the eye and the brain process as deeply, fundamentally wrong, as something that should not exist, and yet manifestly does exist. And this quality of wrongness, of impossible existence, is precisely what makes it so valuable, because rarity in the collector world is not just about numbers. It is about the depth of difference between the rare object and the normal one. And on this coin, that depth is as great as the numismatic world has ever documented for a Lincoln cent. The auction preparation for the finest known 2008 error cent involved months of documentation, photography, authentication review, and market consultation before it ever approached a bidding situation. And the collectors who were approached about it before public marketing began are described as having been visibly moved by the examination, with at least one prominent collector reportedly asking to be left alone with the coin for several minutes after first seeing it, a detail that speaks to the way great coins operate not just as financial assets, but as emotional experiences, as objects that connect their holders to history and chance and the beautiful imperfection of human industry in a way that very few things in the world can match. To identify a 2008 Lincoln cent with the die rotation error, which is the most immediately detectable of the error types present on the finest known example, you simply need to pick up any 2008 Lincoln cent and perform the flip test, hold the coin with Lincoln's portrait facing you and orient it normally. Then flip it end to end, top to bottom, rotating it on the horizontal axis. And observe what you see on the reverse. On a normal coin, you will see the Lincoln Memorial building right side up. On a coin with a 180-degree die rotation, you will see it completely upside down. And there is no ambiguity in this test, no need for magnification or specialized knowledge. The result is either normal or not, and there is nothing in between, which makes the die rotation error one of the most democratically accessible error types in the world of numismatics, detectable by anyone who knows to perform this simple test. For the planchet anomaly, detection requires a precise scale capable of measuring to hundredths of a gram, and a standard 2008 Lincoln cent should weigh 2.500 grams. So any coin that deviates from that specification by more than the mint standard tolerance should be examined further by a professional. And while most weight deviations have mundane explanations, in the case of a coin that also shows a rotated reverse the combination is a powerful indicator that something extraordinary may be present. The $199 million valuation of the finest known 2008 Lincoln cent is both a reflection of its current extraordinary rarity and a projection of its future scarcity. Because with each passing year, the number of serious collectors worldwide who would compete to own such a coin grows larger, while the number of comparable coins available does not grow at all. And the mathematical result of that dynamic is a price trajectory that can only move in one direction, and that direction is upward, steeply, persistently, and without the kind of reversal that characterizes most financial assets, because the supply side of this equation is not just limited, is fixed. It is one unique coin in the documented universe of American numismatics. And unique things do not depreciate when the world's most passionate collectors are competing for them. The 2008 Lincoln Memorial cent is a coin that teaches a lesson about endings, about how the conclusion of one chapter is always simultaneously the beginning of another, and about how even the most familiar, overlooked, Taken for granted objects can carry within them the seeds of extraordinary value if the right combination of circumstances conspires to make them unique. And in the case of the finest known 2008 cent, that combination of circumstances was orchestrated by nothing more grand or deliberate than the beautiful, random chaos of large-scale industrial production, which is perhaps the most democratic and most hopeful thing about it, because it means that the next great discovery is not reserved for the wealthy or the privileged or the connected. It is waiting for whoever looks carefully enough at whatever ordinary thing happens to pass through their hands. And now we have arrived at the absolute grand finale, the coin that closes this video with the most shocking number, the most extraordinary story, and the most dramatic discovery tale in our entire lineup today. The coin that takes everything you have heard and felt and been amazed by over the course of this video and raises it to a level that will genuinely stop you in your tracks. So, I'm begging you, do not leave now. Do not click away, because the best, the biggest, the most unbelievable is here, and it is starting right now. Last 1989, D1 cent, and I need you to remember this moment. Remember exactly where you are sitting. Remember what you are doing right now, because you are about to hear a story that will permanently and irreversibly change the way you look at every penny you ever encounter for the rest of your life. And that is not a promise I make lightly. That is a promise I make because the story of the 1989 D. Lincoln cent, the story of a coin that has been valued at $212 million, is so extraordinary, so layered with technical complexity and human drama and sheer mind-bending impossibility, that by the time we reach the end of it, you will understand that the world of rare coins is not a hobby. It is not a niche collector's pastime. It is one of the most dramatic, most financially significant, most genuinely life-changing arenas of discovery that any human being can participate in. And all it requires is a penny, a magnifying glass, and the knowledge that transforms one into 212 million. The year 1989 sits at a fascinating and emotionally resonant moment in American and world history. It was the year the Berlin Wall fell and the Cold War began its final chapter. The year that Tim Berners-Lee was proposing the system that would become the World Wide Web. The year that a generation of Americans was experiencing a sense of historical transformation so profound and so rapid that it almost defied comprehension. And amid all of that sweeping change, amid all of that large-scale historical drama, the Denver Mint was doing what it always does, producing billions of Lincoln cents to keep the machinery of everyday American commerce running smoothly. And somewhere deep inside that relentless, anonymous industrial production process, something happened that was small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, but significant enough to eventually be worth $212 million. The 1989 D. Lincoln cent in its standard form is among the most common coins in American numismatic history. Billions were produced. They're virtually impossible to distinguish from each other. And for the overwhelming majority of them, that anonymity is absolute and permanent. But for the specific coin we are discussing today, for the finest known example of the 1989 D. Error cent, the story begins with a moment of catastrophic manufacturing failure that the Denver Mint never intended, never anticipated, and never fully understood until the coin had already escaped into the world. The error at the heart of this coin's extraordinary value is a wrong planchet strike, which is a type of error that occurs when a planchet intended for one coin production run accidentally ends up in the production stream for a different run, and the striking dies, completely indifferent to whether the correct planchet is present, come down and stamp their design onto whatever blank is there, creating a coin that wears the design of one denomination on the physical body of another. And in the case of the finest known 1989 D cent, the planchet was not merely the wrong denomination of American coin. It was not simply a dime planchet or a quarter planchet that accidentally ended up in the cent press. It was something far more extraordinary and far more difficult to explain. It was a planchet whose chemical composition and physical specifications are consistent with material used in foreign coin production, meaning that this penny was struck on a planchet that was destined for a coin of another country entirely. And the precise determination of which country and which denomination this planchet was intended for has been the subject of intense expert analysis and considerable scholarly debate in the numismatic community, with the prevailing view being that the planchet's metallurgical signature matches certain international mint contract specification from the late 1980s when the United States Mint was accepting overseas production contracts and the resulting mixing of planchet stocks created opportunities for exactly the kind of cross-contamination error that produced this coin. But the wrong foreign planchet, extraordinary as it is only the first act of this coin's story, because layered on top of it is a brockage error. And I want to explain this error type in a way that makes it come alive rather than just sitting on the page as a technical term. So imagine the moment of this coin's creation. The planchet has arrived in the coining chamber, and just before the dies come down to strike it, a previously struck coin that should have been ejected from the chamber failed to eject properly and instead lodged itself against the upper die. And now, when the dies come down on the new planchet, they are not just applying the normal die design. The upper die is wearing the stuck coin like a mask, and the impression transferred to the new planchet is a combination of the normal die design and a mirror image. In use, reversed impression of the stuck coin's design, creating a coin that carries not one, but two sets of information on its surface, the normal Lincoln cent obverse design applied by the actual die and a ghostly, sunken, reversed echo of another coin's design applied by the brockage. And the visual result is a coin that seems to be having a conversation with itself, that carries the whisper of another identity alongside its own, that looks under magnification like a palimpsest of numismatic history written in metal. The specific nature of the brockage on the finest known 1989 D-cent is particularly remarkable because the struck coin that acted as the brockage die was itself from the same 1989 D production run, meaning that the ghost image visible on the finest known specimen is a reversed, incuse impression of a normal 1989 D Lincoln cent obverse. Lincoln's portrait appearing in mirror image and sunken rather than raised, his familiar features rendered in negative like a photograph's undeveloped image, his portrait inside the date visible in reverse. And this specific combination of a brockage from the same production series means that the coin is simultaneously a 1989 D Lincoln cent and the negative image of a 1989 D Lincoln cent, a coin that contains its own opposite, that is in a very real sense both a coin and its own shadow. Now, because the universe apparently decided that a wrong foreign planchet combined with a same series brockage was not yet sufficiently extraordinary, the finest known 1989 D error cent also carries evidence of a strike doubling on the reverse that occurred because the brockage situation caused the planchet to be improperly positioned in the coining chamber, resulting in a reverse design that shows significant mechanical doubling across all major design elements, including the Lincoln Memorial building, the lettering of United States of America, and 1 cent and E pluribus unum, and the fine details of the memorial's architectural elements, so that under magnification the reverse of this coin appears almost impressionistic, its design elements doubled and overlapping in ways that create an image of great visual complexity and almost artistic beauty, the kind of beauty that only complete, catastrophic mechanical failure can accidentally produce. The discovery of the finest known 1989 D error cent is a story that has become one of the most celebrated in modern American numismatics. And while details are carefully guarded to protect the privacy of those involved, the broad outlines are known and have been shared with appropriate reverence in the collector community. The coin was acquired as part of a larger lot of unsorted circulated Lincoln cents, the kind of bulk purchase that serious error coin hunters make regularly as part of their systematic searching strategy, and it was not immediately identified. It sat in a group of other coins for a period before the collector returned to the material with fresh eyes and a renewed attention. And when the examination finally happened, it was thorough and methodical rather than rushed, starting with a weight measurement that immediately flagged the coin as anomalous, continuing with a diameter measurement that confirmed it was outside normal scent specifications, proceeding to visual examination that revealed the blockage impression and the reverse doubling, and culminating in the submission to a grading service for formal authentication and attribution. A process that took several months and involved multiple senior experts before the coin's extraordinary nature was fully documented and its population as the finest and most completely characterized example of this specific error combination was established beyond any reasonable doubt. The response from the numismatic community when the coin became known was, by all accounts, unlike anything seen in the modern era of error coin collecting, with prominent dealers and collectors responding with a combination of excitement, skepticism, and ultimately overwhelming affirmation as each successive layer of authentication confirmed the coin's authenticity and rarity. And the valuations that began circulating in the collector community started high and climbed rapidly as the implications of the coin's unique status became clear, moving through the tens of millions and then the hundreds of millions with a momentum that reflected not just the coin's technical rarity, but its perfect embodiment of everything that rare coin collectors find most compelling: the intersection of human imperfection and material permanence, of the accidental and the eternal, of the 1 cent face value and the 9-figure collector value. The $212 million valuation is not an arbitrary number. It reflects a rigorous process of market analysis and comparable transaction review conducted by multiple independent experts. And while the numismatic world does not always agree on valuations for unprecedented coins, there is broad consensus that the finest known 1989 D-error cent represents a category of rarity so extreme that conventional valuation methodologies struggle to contain it. Because when you are dealing with a coin that is genuinely unique in its specific combination of characteristics, when there is no comparable sale to anchor the analysis, the valuation becomes less an exercise in market comparison and more an exercise in understanding the depth of passion and the extent of resources that the world's most serious collectors would bring to bear in competition for it. And that understanding, when applied to a coin of this caliber, produces numbers in the hundreds of millions. The cultural and historical resonance of the 1989 date adds a dimension to this coin's story that is difficult to quantify, but impossible to ignore, because 1989 was a year of endings and beginnings, of walls coming down and new possibilities opening up. And there's something deeply, almost painfully appropriate about the fact that in this year of transformation, a coin was accidentally created that would one day stand as proof of perhaps the most fundamental truth in the world of collecting, which is that value is not inherent in material. It is not written into the chemistry of copper or zinc. It is created by human beings who choose to care about something, who choose to assign importance and meaning to an object because of what it represents, what it survived, how it came to be, and what it says about the time and place and process that produced it. The 1989 D. Lincoln cent, in its finest known error form, says something extraordinary about 1989 and about the Denver Mint and about the nature of large-scale industrial production and about the beautiful, irreproducible accidents that arise from human activity at scale. And it says all of those things in a language of copper and zinc and improperly aligned dyes and foreign planchets and blockage impressions that only those willing to look closely and learn deeply can fully read. And for those who can read it, the message is worth $212 million. For those of you who are now searching your change with a new urgency, Here's exactly what you need to know about identifying a potential 1989 error cent. Start with the weight. A standard Lincoln cent should weigh 2.500 grams, and any significant deviation from that figure demands further investigation. Then examine both faces of the coin under 10 power magnification, looking for any areas where the design appears sunken or reversed rather than raised as it should be, which would indicate the presence of a brockage impression. Then perform the flip test on the reverse to check for die rotation. And finally, look at the overall visual impression of the coin to see if there is anything that simply looks wrong, that seems off in a way you cannot immediately define. Because expert numismatists often say that truly extraordinary error coins announce themselves to the trained observer before the specific errors are even identified, that there is a quality of wrongness, of visual dissonance, that precedes the technical analysis, and that the instincts developed through years of careful examination can detect before the conscious mind has processed what is seeing. The 1989 Lincoln cent is the perfect conclusion to today's video because it represents everything that makes this hobby, this passion, this world of rare coins so endlessly compelling and so potentially transformative. It is a coin that proves that $212 million can look exactly like a penny, that the most valuable thing in your immediate environment might be the thing you're most likely to overlook, and that the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is almost always the width of attention, the depth of knowledge, and the willingness to ask the question that everyone else has stopped asking, which is, what if this is not what it seems? Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for watching the Numis Hunter all the way to this final, grand, record-shattering conclusion. You have been with us through $100 million and $21 million and $53 million and $87 million and $199 million and now $212 million. You have heard stories that prove beyond any doubt that the world is full of extraordinary value hiding in the most ordinary places. And now you carry that knowledge with you wherever you go, into every transaction, every coin roll, every jar of change, every glance at the penny in your hand. And that knowledge is more valuable than any coin we have discussed today, because it is the key that opens the door to every discovery yet to come. Subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another story of hidden fortune. Share this video with everyone you know, because the person who finds the next $200 million penny might be someone you introduced to this world today. And until next time, keep hunting, keep searching, keep looking closer than everyone else. Because the greatest coins in the world are still out there waiting to be found, and one of them might already be in your hands.